Well, thank you all for coming in. I'm going to get going. I think I know everybody here, but just in case not everybody knows me, I'll just do a quick introduction as we just get started. All right, good. So I'm Scott Ostrode. I wear a couple different hats in life. I have a sales team that I run out of our El Dorado Hills branch. And last year we just closed out. We closed 132 sales for just over $70 million. And so I'm going to kind of talk through today some of the tactics that we use on the sales side with those guys, just kind of the best practices on that. And then the other hat that I wear that's fitting more and more snugly is my team leader role here in Roseville. So if you've been in a classroom or a setting like this with me in the past, you know that these generally tend to be class participation, audience participation type discussions that we all learn more from each other when we share our ideas. So if anybody's got some questions along the way, feel free to take yourself off mute if you need me to clarify anything as we go through. And I'm going to share a bunch of stuff that has worked for us. This is by no means gospel. You guys might have some other things that you're doing that are working really well out there in the field. So I'd love to get your feedback on that stuff as well. So we all walk out of here a little bit smarter than when we walked in. So is my audio good for everybody? Everybody can hear me okay? Okay, cool. All right, so I'm going to turn on my screen share. And we'll get kind of going. So I developed this course, I was looking back probably in 2017. And what's interesting is the fundamentals are still the same now as they were then. So definitely the market has shifted, some things have changed. But these 7 secrets that we're going to talk about today are still as fundamentally important now as they were when I first put this together 3 or 4 years ago. And again, this is stuff that we use with my sales team and just information that I've collected best practices from other real estate agents around the area and around the country. So with your permission, let's go ahead and get started. No reason to delay any further. So if I could just advance this. All right, so I'm just going to kind of break this down into 7 bullet points as we go through today. So our first bullet point or our first secret is just this idea about schooling your clients. So what do I mean by that? Is what I'm saying is it's our job as a buyer's agent to educate our clients as to what is going on in the market and what it's like to be working with you as a real estate professional. So as you're writing down notes today, you're writing down things underneath this bullet point for schooling your clients. The first step that I highly, highly recommend it become part of your normal business practices is each time that you're working with a buyer, before you ever get in a car and go show them homes or you're meeting them at the property, the first step in your success is always going to be doing a buyer's consultation as that first thing that you do. The buyer's consultation is that opportunity to sit down with your new clients and really set the expectation about what it's like to work with you and what's going on out there in the market. So just by kind of a show of hands, if you're willing to share, who is consistently doing a buyer's consult before they go out and show properties? So a couple of hands, not everybody, which I think that's fair. I think that is, sometimes we do them, sometimes we don't. I can just say this is that if you do take that time up front, buyer's consult's an hour maybe. If you do take that time up front, it's going to save both yourself and your client time over the course of your relationship. And the buyer's consult can look different in however you choose to do that. I love the idea of meeting them in the office here or wherever your office happens to be, because that is your home court advantage. If you can get them into your space, into your office, then you have a home court advantage of the professionalism of the office space in which you work in. With that being said, I've done them at Starbucks. I've done them on the hood of a car. Nowadays, you could do them on Zoom. For me, the reason that the main goal, a couple different things, but one of the main goals of doing the buyer's consultation is that by the end of it, you've had your clients narrow down whatever their 5 must-haves are in the home that they intend to buy. So I'm saying must have, the things that they have to have, the things that are non-negotiable, not the things they want, not the things that they would like, not the things that would be pretty darn nice, but those 5 things that are non-negotiable that they're going to have, that they really, that this is what they want out of this next place that they're going to live. And by the way, if there's more than one decision maker, it is a combined list of 5 between the decision makers involved in the purchase. In a market like we're in right now with limited inventory and not a whole lot of choices out there, what I would say to a client is, if we find a house that has 4 of those 5 things, so basically have 80% of what you're looking for, that is your 100% house. Because there's not probably going to be a lot of choices, I'm guessing, depending on what your client's criteria is, but there's not going to be a ton of choices available for them. So if I can show you a home that has 4 of the 5 things that are your must-haves, that is that 100% house, and that's the house you should consider making an offer on. So before I go forward, any questions or comments on that statement? Okay. If anything comes up, like I said, feel free to take yourself off mute.
I have a comment.
I'm sorry, who said that? Go ahead, whoever said that.
Can you hear me, Scott? It's Emily.
No, we can't hear you. You're frozen. But I bet you come back. I bet you hang up and come back. So here's the other part of that is, if you've heard me talk in the past, I pretty consistently say that it's my goal, or maybe perhaps it's your goal, to be the local economist of choice for your clients. Meaning that you got to have that market knowledge about what's going on out there, so that when you go out there and look, you're setting the expectation. So let me show you a couple of ways that I would go about doing that. I'm just going to open up. I had this pulled up from earlier, and I just was using this example that I just did a quick search on residential homes, active, pending, sold in since going back over the last 60-ish days, between $500,000 and $600,000 in all of Roseville. And I'm going to click this button up at the top that says statistics. So I would share information with my clients along these lines, and that is, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, our clients here. If you look at what's going on, the average sales price in this particular search, so between $500,000 and $600,000 in all of Roseville, on average, homes sell for above list price. So you can see on here, the average list price is $544. The average sales price is $547. So not every house sells for above list price. However, on average, right now in Roseville, for homes between $500,000 and $600,000, they're selling for above list price. And the reason why I bring that up is that you're now giving your clients permission to make an offer that's higher than what the seller's asking for. The other information that I would pull off of here is that the average days on the market right now for that same criteria is only 12 days. And how I'd frame that with my clients is, I'm going to send you homes for you to consider. When a house comes on the market that I think is going to hit at least 4 of those 5 criteria for you, we got to go see that thing today. We got to go see it right away, because it may not be available if we don't go see it right away. And then the follow-up with that is, I know buying a home is a big decision. However, we don't have a lot of time to make an offer. If this is the home that fits your criteria, if this is what you're comfortable with, I'd recommend that you don't delay. You don't take the weekend to think about it. You don't wait 3 or 4 days to think about if this is the one or not. If you wait 3 or 4 days, you may not even have a chance to have be part of the conversation. Okay, and then going down to the bottom of this page. What's interesting here is that this was saying that there was 94 sales in Roseville in that same criteria, 94 sales over the last 2 months. 81 of 94 went pending in the first 30 days. And you guys know that already. You guys are feeling that in the market, I'm sure. But when you're able to share these statistics with people, it starts to crystallize for them what they're getting into. So 86% of homes go into contract in the first 30 days. And then what's also interesting is that the homes that go into contract quickly sell for more than the ones that linger on the market. So to put that differently, if you got a client that's considering a home that's been on the market for 45 days or 60 days, well, then maybe that price is flexible. But for those ones that just came on the market, chances are it's going to take a full price offer or above for a seller to take your offer seriously in the market that we're presently in. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Sorry, Scott, could you, I was making notes and I missed how you got to this report. Could you show us that again in MLS?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me just go back. So, I set my criteria, right? So residential, active pending, sold.
Standard search, okay.
Standard search, yeah, sorry, standard search. Yeah. And then I just clicked on the statistic button right here.
Yeah, I just didn't know the standard search part. I was missing that. Thank you so much.
Yep, for sure. For sure. Any other questions or comments on that part? We're good on that one? I know it's straightforward, and I know this is stuff that you probably already all know. Here's the reality is that our clients probably don't. Don't make the assumption that your clients know just how hot the market is, just how fast things are selling, just how the prices at which they're selling for. Right? I was driving home from work on whichever night it was this week. I don't know what day it was. One day this week. And I was talking to a client, and he said, "This is a referral from coming out of Southern California." And he said, "You know, what's going on in the market? What's the average time on market?" I said 4 hours, and he started laughing. He goes, "Oh crap!" I'm like, "Well, it's not really 4 hours. However, it is only a couple of days before the good houses are selling." In their particular case, they were talking about they want to come to town the weekend after this one and look at houses. They want to go see houses, but they don't intend to buy anything until April. I said, "I'm happy to show you a couple houses. That's fine. But the houses I show you in mid-February aren't going to be on the market. So if you just want to see samples, if you want to get a feel for architecture or neighborhoods, not a problem. But just keep in mind, you can't fall in love with any of those because those are houses that you can't have because you're not a buyer right now. You're just out there trying to get acquainted with the market." Okay. Any other questions or comments on that part? We good? Okay. So that part really, that schooling your clients really just has to do about setting the expectations. So that is doing a buyer's consult to find out what these people absolutely have to have in their next home. Maybe it's getting the two decision makers on the same page about what's most important in that purchase. Then it's getting them educated on what's going on in the market, what the inventory levels are like, that multiple offers are common, above list price is common. And you might want to share with them too, just as I was just kind of thinking about it, is it may take Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, it may take you making offers on 2 or 3 or 4 houses before we get the one that sticks. Don't get discouraged with that. That's just indicative of the market right now. If we miss out on one, that just wasn't your house. Be patient, stick with me, and we'll get you one. Because I think we probably all at some point had a buyer that just got frustrated with what was going on with getting outbid and eventually just said, "You know what, I'm done with this." So if you have that conversation up front, that might help to that you can take them back to that place in the future. And then the other thing I'd say too is during that buyer consult is I always like to kind of throw in this statement, and you guys can adjust the number for your own. But I would say something like, on average, I show my clients 7 or 8 houses before they buy one. In fact, oftentimes one of my clients will make an offer the very first time that we go out to look at houses. And the reason why I would do that, by the way, the information is accurate, but the reason why I would do that is it gives them permission to buy a house the first time they go out. They don't have to go look for weeks on end or weekends and weekends and weekends. I'm giving them permission that they would not be the only person in the history of real estate to buy maybe even the very first house that they see. Okay?
I have a question, Scott. It's Emily.
Hi.
Hi. I turned my camera off because I have spotty internet, so sorry.
You're good.
Do you cover the aggressiveness of releasing contingencies and things like that we're seeing in the market as well in your buyer consultation? and the timeframes to write and those sort of things?
That's a good point. Yeah, I think that's appropriate. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about terms and things like that in a minute. I don't want to skip ahead, but that's maybe one of the secrets we're going to go through. But yeah, I think that would be a good opportunity. I've heard people say that they will bring a sample offer to a buyer's consultation, and they'll walk them through what an offer looks like. So they're already kind of prepping them for what it's going to look like when they make their own offer. And you could talk about, yeah, for sure. I like that. Talking about contingency timeframes, waiving them, what typical buyer fees are, what typical seller fees are. That's a good idea. I like that. I'll pull this back up. Okay. So then going to secret number 2 is picking up the phone. So what I mean by pick up the phone is that is getting on the phone and calling the listing agent. And I'm using the word calling intentionally. I understand a lot of people like to text, a lot of people like to email, and I understand that not everybody's going to call you back. However, I highly recommend before you go out to show the house that you're having some sort of a dialogue with the listing agent for a couple of different reasons. First and foremost, make sure the home's still available. Make sure that they're not just about to accept an offer right now, right? Maybe this house has been on the market for 2 or 3 weeks, but it's still active for whatever the reason happens to be. But maybe they just got 2 offers overnight and they're getting ready to accept one right now. Don't go show your clients a house they can't have, right? So having that conversation just to make sure that it's truly available. The second part of that then is to build rapport with the listing agent. That if this is going to be a competitive situation, at the end of the day, we're all human beings and we all have emotions and opinions. And we know that the listing agent is going to have some sort of influence over the seller as to which offer to go with or which one to counter. So by picking up the phone and having a conversation with the listing agent, you can build rapport. You can butter them up. You can say things like, wow, fantastic listing. Congratulations on getting another one. I really like the photos you took. Who's your photographer? Whatever it happens to be, but build rapport with them, compliment them on their success, on their listing, on the whatever that's going on, and then find out in that conversation what's going to be most important to the seller should your client choose to make an offer. And we're going to talk about the terms of that offer here in a second. But imagine this, imagine if you have a conversation with a listing agent, they kind of lay out that, my clients, the sellers here, they need a rent back, or they need a longer escrow, or they need a shorter escrow, or maybe who knows what the terms happen to be that the seller is looking for. But imagine if you could just write a winning offer right off the bat without getting a counteroffer. That's the goal, right? Because until you're in contract, you've got nothing. So by having that conversation with the agent, finding out what's most important to the seller may give you the opportunity to write that winning offer right up front without ever getting a counteroffer coming back. I wouldn't assume that with every seller it's price. I wouldn't assume with every seller that it's a quick close, right? I know a lot of sellers are apprehensive right now saying, yeah, I want to sell my home, but I don't know where I'm going to go to. Maybe they need a rent back. Maybe they prefer a longer close. So that gives them more time to identify the property that they're going to purchase. So do your best to have a verbal conversation with a listing agent there. If need be, it could be via text if it had to be. It could be via email if it had to be. But you all know how things get lost in translation when they're written down electronically. And you have a much better chance of building rapport and getting to the answers you really need if you're having a voice-to-voice conversation. Now, let me add one more thing to that before I open it back up to you guys, is if you are a listing agent or as you are listing properties, and I know you're busy and things come up and you get a lot of calls, do your best to answer the calls of those buyer's agents that are calling you and asking these same questions. Because you might need these people in the future. If nothing else, there could be a time in the future when you're going to be making an offer on one of their houses. And if you're treating this person kindly, with respect, with professionalism, that's a chip in your pocket that you might be able to cash in at some point in the future. Grant, I know everyone on this call is a professional, and that's probably is the way they already handle their businesses, but I just thought it'd be worth saying that. Treat others the way you'd want to be treated. Answer their calls whenever you possibly can. Get them back the information. And then the last thing with that is then you're able to tell them again the terms that the seller is looking for. What if you didn't have to hassle with doing counter offers because someone just wrote a winning offer right off the bat? That would save you time. It would make you look like a hero in the eyes of your clients. Okay? So questions or comments as it relates to building rapport and talking with the listing agent? I must be doing a really good job or I'm boring the hell out of each one of you.
Scott, I can make one comment.
Yeah, hit it.
So I've been working with clients trying to find a home in Granite Bay, and it's been really frustrating, as you probably can understand. We found a property that was pending, and it was Keller Williams' agent. She was amazing. We built a rapport right away. We talked about the listing. We talked about her current pending offer. I said, "Are you looking for a backup?" They had not accepted a backup offer. And she was willing to talk about that. So what ended up happening is that her buyer was a first-time buyer, and she wasn't sure that it would go all the way through because it's a high-end property, their first home, and they might get scared in the process at some point, and then things would fall apart, whether it's inspections, probably not the loan, but inspections. So we kept working together, and in the end, we did not get the property. They countered back on repairs. Our offer was a stronger offer, but the buyer accepted their counter and went with the property. So we did not get it, but the lessons learned during those conversations back and forth were really helpful to me and were transparent as she could make them and friendly and just a positive experience all the way around.
Yeah.
So she and I are both hoping our paths will cross again. And she's looking now for keeping her eyes and ears open for another home for my buyer to kind of help out. And it was just a positive thing all the way around. So you do learn a lot by talking to that listing agent.
Well, yeah, thanks for sharing that. So and that's a great story that you can share with your next client too, right? And this is we still are a small group of people that sell homes for a living, right? I mean, yeah, there's a lot of people that have licenses. It feels like everyone probably right now has a real estate license or is trying to get it. But the reality is, it's still a relatively small community, and you're gonna cross paths with the same agents time and time again. And the better relationship that you have with them, you have the better chance of protecting your client or getting your client preferential treatment on a future sale potentially. So yeah, I love that. Thank you. Okay, anybody else? All right, let's move on then. Let's talk about terms. So we kind of alluded to it before, but secret 3 is it's all in the terms. So rewinding just for a second. So we've had a conversation with the listing agent. We'll make the assumption that we had a conversation with the listing agent. The listing agent's told us what's most important to the seller. We've gone and showed the home now. Our clients like it. They're ready to make an offer. Now we want to make the strongest offer we possibly can from the very beginning. Again, with that hope that we won't ever even get a counter offer coming back. So what are some things that you can do outside of offering a higher price in order to make your offer look more attractive in the eyes of the seller and the listing agent? So I'll throw out a couple of things, and I'd love to hear any other things you would like to add to that as we go through. So clearly it is, again, we've had a conversation with the agents. We kind of know what the seller is looking for, but even outside of that, right? Are the things that we can manipulate or things that we can change? Are we going to write the fastest close possible? Is that in the best interest of both buyer and seller? Or do we want to do something that's a little bit longer? Frankly, I mean, there's always exceptions, but overwhelmingly, sellers would say, I'd like to close as quickly as possible, but I'm going to need some time to move out. And whenever possible, why not just offer that certain amount of days or weeks or month or whatever it happens to be at no cost to the seller? right? Just we're going to give you a 17-day close or a 21-day close, and we're going to let you stay for 30 days after the close at no cost. And as you're talking to your buyer about that, remind them that, if they're closing escrow today on February 4th, their first mortgage payment is not due until April the 1st or April, whenever the payment is due in April. So yeah, we're giving them 30 days worth of free rent. However, keep in mind, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, you're not making your first payment until we get to April. So maybe you're going to do a faster close, but with some free rent. The other things to really consider are that I think is, can you, and Emily brought this up, can we waive anything or reduce our contingency timelines, right? The contract's going to default to 17 days on the appraisal, 17 days on inspections, and 21 days on the loan. Do you really need 17 days to do inspections? Almost certainly not. I know it's become more and more common nowadays that the listing agent's providing or the seller's providing inspections in advance. So maybe you can waive your inspections altogether, potentially. Be able to talk to your clients about the pros and cons about what that would look like, right? The appraisal is a little bit tricky. Maybe your client's willing to waive the appraisal. I would just say that's not for the faint at heart. Make sure you're having a clear dialogue with your client. What that would mean if they waive the appraisal, what that would mean to them as far as maybe their out-of-pocket expense or their out-of-pocket down payment to cover any gap that might be there. Maybe the term says that your client's willing to pay $5,000 above the appraised value or $10,000 above the appraised value. So you're not waiving the appraisal in its entirety, but you're letting the seller know that should the appraisal come in light, they're willing to pay $5,000 more or $10,000 more than what that number is. Okay. The next thing with that is, can you change some of the costs that typically fall on the seller side and move them over to the buy side? Right? So rather than splitting escrow 50-50 or title 50-50, why not just put all of that on the buy side? It only moves the needle probably on your closing costs by $800, $1,500, something like that. But move some of the costs that would typically fall on the seller side over to the buyer side. And if you choose to do that, we'll cover this in a second here, but make sure that anything that you're doing that's going to make your offer stand out, that you're letting the listing agent know about that in the form of your cover letter. Right? We want to make sure that the listing agent knows that you have taken some fees that are typically seller fees and move them over to the buy side. You want to let the listing agent know that you've taken the inspection contingency time frame from 17 days down to 10, or that you're willing to pay $5,000 above the appraised value. I know the offer says that, but again, we're all human beings. And if you got 12 offers on a house, you might not be paying close attention to every single one. And so if you got a cover letter that spells out exactly how your offer is special, then you're giving yourself a better chance of the listing agent paying attention to what that is.
There's a simple way to do that too. If you want in car forms, to just use the form that's offer summary, and it will detail that out for you. And of course, write a nice little note, but that is a clear way that pulls that information in after you've written your offer.
I agree. Did anybody else here use that offer cover sheet or familiar with what Emily's talking about?
I've never used it. I just write my own email template. I have it in my templates, and then I just fill it out. So it's just the way I do it.
Yeah.
But I like to
The cover sheet
and then put it in email as well.
There's a cover sheet and there's a document called offer summary, and they're two different things. You can use whichever you like, or both, or make your own, or whatever. There's two different ways to.
Emily, can you see my screen from where you are?
Yes.
So where would I find offers? If I have an offer in front of me right now, how would I get to a place where I could get that offer summary?
Go to all forms in the top right. And search offer summary, or just summary.
Sorry, your pictures are all over the top of what this is, so I can't see it. So let me try a different way.
So
Yeah.
it's down under the multiples, and it's just that bottom one, that's RPA. That's for lease, I think. There you go.
Okay, cool. Never seen that one. So there you go. Yeah, purchase price, deposit, loan amount, close of escrow. Yeah, there you go.
Contingency timeframe. Yep.
Two time frames. In this case, waiving the inspection contingency. Okay, that's interesting. I've never seen that one before. I like it. I like it. Now again, but like, let's just say that you were changing some of the seller fees over to the buyer side. That wouldn't automatically be here. Maybe you could add that under other terms or something.
Correct.
Or if you're willing, if you're going to be paying above appraised value, make sure that gets spelled out on here.
If you do have, yeah, if you have other terms, it'll pull it into that spot.
Like down here.
Yes. But
Okay.
you're right. It doesn't show the escrow, splits, home warranty, and that kind of stuff.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. I've never seen that before. Thanks, Emily. And I don't know, I think it was Nancy that said it, like she just has her template set up so that every time, it's already filled out, ready to go. She just has to change dates and addresses and then whatever those differences are. So just creating that template, then you already have half the work done. You just got to fill in the particulars for your offer there. Okay. Anyone want to have a conversation about escalation clauses?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody on this call? Anybody on this call use it? Ever use it?
I have not.
I have, but it's been a long time. It was probably back in the 2017 era.
Okay. So if you're not familiar with that term, so what an escalation clause is basically saying something along the lines of buyer is willing to pay $1,000 above the top offer received. Now, again, that's not for the faint of heart. I've never done it. I'm not a big fan of doing it. Frankly, some brokerages will not allow for that to take place. I don't know if everyone on this call right now is part of KW Roseville or not. So check with your broker if that is allowed or not. As we sit here right now, it is allowed in Roseville. But that's just one of those tactics to say, look, my client's willing to pay $1,000 more than anybody else. If you're going to do that, there should be some other parameters that are there. Something that says, number one, you have to prove to me that you got this other offer at this other price that I'm now willing to pay $1,000 more than. And then secondarily, in my opinion, there ought to be some sort of cap so that offer price doesn't just go to infinity. Right? Willing to pay $1,000 over the next highest offer up to $515,000. Okay. So I'm not a fan of that just as a strategy, but I'm just saying that it is something that is out there if you would choose that you'd want to be considering that. Okay.
I have a comment.
Yes, ma'am.
I have been a listing agent and received offers with that, and it put a bad taste in my seller's mouth for that person, just feeling like it was, I think it can be received poorly. You never know, but if $1,000 over the next person, it can feel kind of slimy, I guess is what I'm gonna say.
I understand. So it just comes up when I've had this conversation in the past or taught this class in the past, it has come up. So that's the reason why I brought it up. I'm gonna pull up one other form here too, just in case anyone's not aware or haven't seen this one in the past. But this is the confidentiality and non-disclosure agreement. Maybe you've used this in the past, or as a listing agent, maybe you received this in the past. So what this is saying, so this could be part of your offer package that says basically, listing agent or seller, you're not allowed to, you're agreeing to not to disclose the terms of my offer. Not to disclose the offered price there, the terms, the names, whatever. It's all kind of in the body right here. So just keep in mind that if you're the listing agent and this comes over, or if you're going to utilize this with one of your buyers, it's not binding unless both the buyer and the seller agree to it. So if you're putting this as a buyer's agent, if you're putting this in with your package, the listing agent can still share the terms of your offer with others unless the seller has signed off on your confidentiality. Did I confuse anybody with what I just said? Do I need to clarify anything with that?
Yeah, that really confuses me then. So there really isn't much point to sending that.
Yes and no. So number one, I think here's the deal. Here's how I would treat it as listing agent. This is not law. This is how I would treat it as listing agent. If I got one of these from one of the offers, so let's just say I had multiple offers on the house. I had 3 or 4 offers on the house. If one agent included this, I would give that person the professional courtesy of not disclosing the terms to anybody else. Because they've asked me to do that, right? My seller hasn't agreed, but they've taken the professional step to say, look, this is how I run my business. I would do, unless my client advised me otherwise, I would treat that offer as confidential to anybody else who would ask me questions about it. Again, unless the seller was expecting me to do otherwise.
Sorry, Scott, I usually do that where I know there's multiple offers, and generally speaking, that's how the listing agent comes back to me, is, they often don't sign it, but they understand that I'm asking them not to use me as a lever to up the offers.
Yeah. Yeah, that I like. Yeah, thank you for that, Catherine. That's my opinion too. But again, there's no meat behind it unless both the buyer and the seller agree to it in writing, right? But that forms another. So that's CAR form C and D. So while we're on this too, is just give me get the kind of the opinion of the group here. If an agent has an offer submission deadline, as you've had a conversation with them and they've told you what the offer submission deadline is or is listed in MLS, and let's just say that this is a house that you're showing today, or that you've shown today that you know your clients want to buy, but they have an offer submission deadline of Monday, of February the 8th. And you know this is going to be a house that, or you feel like this is going to be a house that gets multiple offers. When do you make your offer? So again, you've shown the house today, your clients have said, I want to make an offer on this thing, but we know the seller is not going to review them until Monday.
That's a tough one. There's a couple of different approaches with that. Most people don't want to be the first offer out because it's one that's used to compare all their offers to. I particularly like to wait. I stay in constant contact and watch the MLS because that can change at any time, but stay in contact with the agent. And then when it gets close to that deadline, call them. And then I ask, what's their highest offer, terms, if they're willing to share with me. But I think there's a MLS rule that they can change that anytime as long as they post it in MLS.
You're right.
You've got to be super diligent if you're going to wait.
You're right. So if you don't make the offer today, the seller could change their mind and review offers today, let's say, and your client never was in consideration because of that. Okay. Anybody? So go ahead. Give me another way of taking that same approach.
I usually ask my clients what they want to do, and we weigh the pros and cons. I make sure to ask the listing agent, is there any chance that you might make a decision before your stated deadline? And if they say it depends, if something wows the seller, then I pass that along to my clients and let them think really hard about it. And I tell them, if you're planning on going all in on this property, my recommendation would be, let's just submit it right now and know that you gave it your best right out of the gates.
Okay.
Yeah.
That works too. That works too. So I can say, just, in talking with my team, if you have an offer submission deadline, let's say at 12 o'clock on Monday, overwhelmingly those offers come in at 11:30 on Monday, right? They're not coming in today. They're not coming in overwhelmingly. They're not coming in on the weekend. They are just waiting until the last minute because they don't want their offer to be leveraged against others. And I get it. I don't think there's a right or a wrong. I like what you said, is that you have the conversation with your client. You have a conversation with the listing agent to say, is there any chance you're going to do preemptive offers? If you use that confidentiality clause, then maybe they're not going to share your terms anyways. I think everybody knows, right? I mean, again, not every house has multiple offers, although it feels like it. So this is just opinion. There's no hard set fact here. I just hate the idea that your clients never got their offer in because you're holding back for something else. So I would just kind of be aware of that as a potential downfall to waiting till the last minute. Okay. All right. Let me pull my screen back over. All right. So moving forward. So those are the, yeah.
Can I ask you a question about terms?
Yeah.
I recently had an experience where I asked the listing agent, as part of my prodding, what's important to the seller. And she specifically said 30-day escrow would be great. So I took it as she's moving out of state, wanted time to collect all her things. We were offering a very generous rent back. And the winning bid ended up going to somebody that had a 15-day escrow. And while we couldn't compete on the other terms, is there perhaps an additional term that we could write into our offers to say, seller has the option to shorten escrow to 20 days upon acceptance, or something to kind of pad us if they are wanting less time than what their agent is communicating to us?
Yeah, I don't see any downfall to doing that. I mean, I think you could, in the offer itself, you could type in something that said 30 days or sooner. And then on your cover letter, you could spell out what you just said. Hey, okay, per your request, our offer is for a 30-day close of escrow. However, my clients are willing and able to close more quickly should your seller change their mind.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's good. And that comes down to communication, right? That's having that communication with the other side. And I think what you said in there too is that sometimes a listing agent doesn't always give you the best information. Okay. And it's not because necessarily they were being malicious or something. Maybe the seller changed their mind. Sorry, my lights went off. I got to wave my hand to make my lights come back onto my office. There we go. Not that the seller's not being, or the listing agent's not being malicious. They're not whatever. The seller changed their mind, or they just were wrong. So yeah, you could definitely do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Good question. Okay, so let's talk about the next step then. So you've now written the offer, and now it's coming over to the listing agent. So the first thing I'm going to say is going to blow your mind, because I'm sure not one of you on the call does this. I'm going to say it anyways, and that's this: is that when you email your offer package over, always make a phone call and or a text to the listing agent confirming receipt of it. Now, I know that sounds like a silly thing to say, but you'd be amazed at how many offers that my team receives that there's never any sort of communication coming from the buyer side.
To me, it's absolutely mind-blowing that a buyer's agent would not call me or text me and tell me their offer's coming over.
I agree.
Because when I've had that happen, and when I do get that tells me that I'm going to have communication issues with this agent throughout escrow.
You got it right. You're taking the words out of my mouth. It's like, so what level of professionalism does it show that the buyer's agent didn't even have the courtesy on behalf of their client to make sure the offer was received? Right? If you're comparing that offer to others, and Nancy, you just said it, this agent maybe isn't that great at communication, or who knows what. The other part of that too is, and it's been my experience, offers end up in spam. They don't end up in your inbox. There could be a great offer that you sent, but they had a firewall or something set up and your offer never even got to them. So make sure you call, make sure you get that confirmation back, regardless of the rest of the things we're going to talk about here in a second, but make sure you get that confirmation back that your offer actually was received. So let's talk about that actual offer package then. What's going to go in there? Well, sorry, let me just take that before I say that. So, okay, sorry, I'm stuttering. With your offer package that's going over there, before anything goes over, again, from that level of professionalism, going back to kind of Nancy's point, is that make sure your offer is complete, which is to say that every page that needs an initial has an initial. Every blank that was supposed to be filled in has been filled in. Every signature has been on there. All the dates are in there. You filled in your brokerage's contact information on the last page of the offer. You filled in the listing agent's contact information in their section. You've got the seller's name in the appropriate place on paragraph, whatever that is, 34. You've got your pre-approval letter in there with you. You've got your proof of funds if you need that. You've got, every component is all going over there in one package. And on top of that whole package is your cover letter or your offer summary thing that's spelling out what made your offer different from the rest. And my recommendation is that all goes over into one attachment so that everything is in one place and the listing agent can't pull out parts of the offer that they wouldn't want the seller to see. What I'm saying is that if you send over a package that's got everything all in one list, it's going to be pretty unlikely that the listing agent is going to print out that whole thing, take out the pages they might not want their client to see, and then scan it back in and only send them over the pages that they'd want.
However, Scott, I am seeing people say that if you include a buyer's personal letter in with the offer, they will reject your offer.
Hold on to that one for a second. We're going to do that. We're going to talk about that in a minute. You're right. Hang on to that. We're going to talk about it in a second. Okay. So again, so you're having that. So you're calling the agent. Just want to make sure you got the offer. Maybe you're having a conversation. Here's a summary of the terms. You told me that this is what your client was looking for. The fast escrow with the long rent back. We did exactly what you asked for. Ask again. When are you reviewing? Has your plan changed there? How many other offers do you have to this point? Continue to build rapport. And then the last piece with that is that if they are getting a loan, if your buyer is getting a loan, bring your loan officer into this communication chain as well. Have that loan officer call over to the listing agent and sell them on why the financing is all put together. This is not just a pre-approval letter, pre-qualification letter. I've already gone through, this is fully underwritten and approved. I know that when Catherine sent the offer over, she said that it has a 17-day close on there. We have a personal guarantee here at ABC Mortgage that we can get this done in 17 days because we've already gone through the whole file. I've got a success rate of closing things on time 99% of the time, whatever it happens to be. But bring in your lender as part of that conversation as well, that then enforces, again, your professionalism. And your lender makes you look better, and you're doing something different that the other agents that are making offers might not be doing. Okay, you guys, if you're putting stuff in the chat, I don't really see it just the way that my screen is set up, just so you know. So I guess I am ignoring you. I'm not intentionally trying to ignore you, but if people are putting stuff in the chat, I don't have a way to see that as I'm talking through this today, unfortunately. Okay. So any other tactics you guys want to talk about as it relates to positioning yourself with to selling your offer to the client? I'm sorry, to the listing agent.
You know what I've done as of late, and it hasn't necessarily been intentional, but it's worked well, is when showing a property, I've noticed some agents are having COVID friendly open houses, is setting an appointment during the open house time and meeting the agent in person, properly introducing them to my clients, and then having a conversation as a team afterwards, and then hanging back and talking to the agent more. Because I think a lot of us have missed that face-to-face interaction with our co-agents. And I found that has really been different because haven't had that this past year. So that's kind of helped a little bit, something different.
Yep. Good point. Good point. Good point. Okay. So here we go. Let's talk about that letter from the heart, because here's the deal. This class used to be called the 7 Secrets to Getting Your Offer Accepted. It's now called the 6 Secrets, because that whole letter from the heart thing now is a fair housing, well, the potential for it to be a fair housing violation. So I'm going to go back over here for a second, because these forms are now part of your offer. And I know, again, this probably doesn't apply to anybody on this call, but some agents out there might not actually read the forms that they're having their clients sign. So I'm just going to point it out just for today's purposes, just for fun. But it says in here, this is the 3rd page now of that offer package, talking about fair housing. And where's that paragraph down here? Paragraph 8, examples that might be discriminatory. It says right here about writing a letter and it going over. Prior to the acceptance of an offer, asking for or offering buyer personal information or letters from the buyer, especially with photos, those types of documents may inadvertently reveal or be perceived as revealing protected status information, thereby increasing the risk of bias, et cetera, et cetera. So it had been common practice. I mean, this was one of those things that I think that we always did a good job of with our clients, was putting that letter from the heart in there about why this was the house they wanted, the whole deal. Fair housing came out, and this form came out in October of last year, saying that's now could be construed as discrimination. Should a seller be deemed or thought to be making a recommendation, or just selecting which offer they want to work with based upon discriminating against a protected class. So those letters ought not be in there anymore, guys. But you want to work.
Scott, you're saying even if it isn't explicitly spelled out by the listing agent, we as buyer's agents could be held liable should somebody else say, well, they put that cute letter in with those cute kids.
So I'm not an attorney, and yes, I wouldn't want to put you in harm's way.
Okay.
Again, like it's saying the kids, the family, I just think that keep yourself out of harm's way. You just take out any sort of letter from the buyer. So, by the way, I did.
What if they really do have really cute kids?
Well, that's awesome. And it does help. I mean, look, again, I said from the beginning, the listing agent, the seller, they're human beings. They have emotions, they have opinions, they have their own biases too, by the way. And it can help influence if you get your offer accepted or not. I would say, yeah, keep those letters out. So here's the deal. I actually figured out how to get the chat up on the screen, and Steve, you just stole my thunder. So what Steve just typed in there is, my understanding, the buyer's agent can, over the phone, share about their buyers, but not in writing or email or text. So I believe that you are accurate in that as well. And here's what I'm saying is that you as buyer's agent could share with listing agent your client's story verbally. You're not providing, and I'm not trying to blur the lines here, and I know I'm recording this call and I'm in a position of authority here in the office. So I'm not trying to put anybody in harm's way, but the way that I read this is saying that me as buyer's agent, I'm not providing anything directly to the seller about the status of my client, about anything important about my client. I'm just having a verbal conversation, agent to agent.
Yeah, and then I guess it's kind of up to the listing agent if they choose to share that with their seller.
I mean, that's the way that I read it. I mean, go back. Let's look at the words that are written right here. Prior to acceptance of offer, asking for or offering buyers personal information or letters from the buyer, especially with photos. This is not agent to client. This is just agent to agent having a conversation. It's not in writing. They're not photos. So don't come back to me later and say Scott told me, because I'll be mad at each one of you. And I'll deny it. I'll say that you're a liar. So anyways, no, in all seriousness, I mean, definitely get away from doing the letters. And I don't know who mentioned it. Maybe it was Nancy or somebody, but I've seen that in the agent remarks now, that if you submit a letter with your package, that they're going to reject your offer. They will not review your offer. I don't know if that's legal either, by the way. I don't know if they can say, I'm not going to share your offer at all. I don't really know, but why put yourself in harm's way? Just take that letter off of your standard protocol when you're submitting offers. Which is too bad, because I had some really cool letters from the heart. I had some really cool stories to share there, but oh well, that was 2019. Okay, moving forward. Get the last crack at it. So what this means is, if to this point if we go back through the steps, you've built rapport with the listing agent, you've complimented them on their listing, you've been great at communication, you found out the type of terms that the seller was looking for, you make a fantastic offer, you called to confirm they got the offer, your loan officer reaffirmed how great of a buyer this was. You've probably made a pretty good impression on them. So I think at that point, it's really reasonable to have a conversation with the listing agent saying, if by chance the offer that we presented was not the best one, would you give my clients the last crack at having a chance to improve their offer? So we've kind of built this friendship. You know that I'm professional. I've shown my professionalism. My clients clearly are serious about buying this home. Would you give me the professional courtesy of, before you accept an offer from somebody else, would you give me a call back and let me know what my clients would have to do in order for their offer to be number one? Now, why is that a win for both sides? So let's just take a hypothetical house that this is a $500,000 home. You've written a great offer. It's for $510,000. Let's say in this particular case, let's say it's just the price. There's nothing else but the price. Everything else your offer is good. Just the price isn't good. You wrote $510,000 and somebody else wrote $515,000. And you say, okay, let me get the last crack at it. The agent comes back and says, you know what, I really liked your offer, Scott, but we got another one that's $515,000. In order to be considered, you'd have to be higher. Well,
guy, they should be trying to get the best price.
That's exactly it. And thank you for saying that. Everybody wins in this case, because I'm not saying, hey, my client as buyer, I'm not saying my client is willing to write better than what you have. I'm saying, tell me what I need to do, and I'll go ask my client if they will. And by the way, Mr. and Mrs. Listing Agent, if I am able to get a better offer than the one you have on the table, you look like a hero. It's in your best interest as a listing agent and the seller's best interest to get the best offer out there, whatever deemed best offer is. But just come back to me and tell me what I need to do to be best. I'll do my best to get you best. And if I do get you best, you just made your client more money, better terms, whatever else. If you don't ask, you're not going to get it, by the way. So this is that kind of that at the very end here, where you know it's going to be a competitive situation. You want to give your client at least let your client be in control whether or not they want this house or not. Because you may go back to your client and say, hey, look, you can have this house. All you got to do is offer them 30 days of free rent. It's yours. At least verbally, they've told me it's yours if you give me 30 days of free rent. Are you willing to do that? And they say, that, hey, if that's all it is 30 days of free rent, I'm willing to do that. We'll send over an addendum. We'll get that thing done. Awesome. Or they may say, you know what? We need a place to live right away. I'm not willing to do that 30 days of free rent or whatever. But it has to be $50 a day, $100 a day. Okay, great. So Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I've told you what you need to do to win. You're now choosing not to do what it takes to win, which is fine. If that's how you feel, we'll just go find you another one. Just keep in mind, this probably isn't the house you're going to get. But now what I'm saying there is you've come back to your client and said, I've told you what would have to happen for you to get this one. If you're choosing not to do that, that's cool. I honor that. We'll go find you something else. Just don't hold me responsible because you didn't get this one. And by the way, you have to detach yourself emotionally from this house because you just told me that you're not willing to do what it takes to get this one. And we'll just move on to the next one. Okay? So questions or comments on that part?
Scott, you may have covered this already, but I'm finding that listing agents, for whatever reason, are giving out less and less information and spending less and less time on the phone with me. This used to not be a problem as much. And I don't know if they're just too busy, they're just getting too many offers, but generally speaking, they're not providing the information. Even when I say, oh, did the clients ask you to keep these confidential? They're just like, well, no, I'm just being fair to everybody. Or sometimes I had one guy who did not respond at all to any of my requests to find out if there were any other offers or what the offers were. He just completely ignored my calls until after deadline.
Yeah, I apologize for not calling you back. I was out of town. I should have been better. You're right. So I think your experience, probably everybody on this call has had something like that in the past, or may have something like that in the future. And although I think that's not the most professional way to act, it's going to happen out there for you. Yet you owe it to yourself and you owe it to your client to do everything you can to follow these types of steps that we just went through. Because you're trying to set yourself apart from the other agents that are potentially have clients that want this house. And I know that not every agent's going to call you back. I know that some of them maybe be more likely to text you than anything else, or they may not get back to you at all, and that's okay. And that's information you can just share back with your client. Hey, I tried to. Here's the steps that I took. Here's all the things that I tried to do to make this thing work, and unfortunately, this person just wasn't playing ball with me. You still owe it to yourself and to your client, though, to go through these steps to try to get it done. Okay. And then the last thing that I have on here is just put yourself in backup position. That if all else fails and you've done everything that you could and they still go with another offer, the idea here is to get yourself in signed backup position, not handshake backup position, not I'll call you if the other one falls out backup position, but truly in backup position. I think I pulled that form out too. Yeah, the backup addendum. So this form's in our car forms. talks about what would have to, you guys can read through this or you guys can pull it up on your own. But if the seller will agree to this, then what this is saying that should buyer number one not perform, that rather than putting that house back active and see what happens, they immediately go to you. In order for this to take place, you would have had to fully negotiate all the terms on your offer that they're agreeing to the terms or the counteroffer terms that are there, right? So to be in full backup, locked in, signed off position, you are negotiating a contract all the way through. You're just sitting in backup position, hoping that buyer number one doesn't perform for some reason. Now, why would a listing agent or why would a seller be willing to do that? Why is this an advantage to them to have a fully accepted backup offer?
I can tell you that personally, because buying agents, whether it's right or wrong, are writing multiple offers on multiple properties. And I've had it happen on my listing. They pulled out, like at the last minute, and we had to go back on the market because they wrote an offer on another property they liked better.
Okay. Like it. So in a market where people panic and they make offers because they don't want to miss out on a situation, or like Nancy's saying, they made an offer on more than one house at a time, just seeing which one would stick, there's a certain level of probability that the first person that goes into contract is not going to close escrow. I haven't run stats lately, but I remember last time, going back to like last summer, granted, the environment was a little bit different, but something like 35% of homes that went pending fell back out for some reason. So one of every three came back on the market for some reason. So it's to the advantage of the seller to have somebody in backup positions that should buyer number one bail, they already have a backup plan. Give me another reason why a seller might want to have someone in signed backup position.
But I have a question on what was just said there. Isn't there a question of legality if you are submitting multiple offers using the same funds?
Yeah, but how are you going to prove it?
I'm sorry?
How are you going to prove it? At the end of the day, what's the report?
Being very strict with me on one because we had first-time buyers that were considering doing that, but it would have been the same funds for both offers, and she had been very, very clear not to do that. So I was just questioning that.
Yep. Yeah, I think. Well, again, legal. I don't know if there's a legality thing in there. I think there's definitely an ethical thing at a minimum. There may be a legal thing too, but at a minimum, it's ethical. Like, how could you're only buying one house. Now, if you're an investor and you're buying a portfolio, different. But you're just a homeowner. You're gonna buy one. And I think it'd be a bad business practices for anybody on this call or anybody inside Keller Williams to make offers on more than one house at a time. Okay.
Thank you.
I think the other reason you would have a backup offer addendum is as a listing agent, you can use it to kind of make sure that the current buyer understands that that there is a backup, and if they choose to walk away, we've got plan B.
100%. Well said. I'll boil that what you just said down to one word, and that is leverage. Listing agent, you can use my backup offer as leverage that should your buyer that you accepted get squirrely in any capacity, they come back with an outrageous repair request. They need an extension on their loan contingency. You can use my offer as leverage to keep that person in line.
Is everyone here seeing a lot of written backup offer opportunities? Because the feedback I'm getting from listing agents is I ask, especially if I know that I'm second best and the seller doesn't want to commit to it. And I get the reasoning why, especially if you have, I kid you not, 10 plus offers, you don't need to lock anybody into backup. But is it prevalent? Are you guys seeing that a lot? Because I'm not.
My clients are mostly just walking away if they lose it, and they're on to the next thing.
Yeah, I think So here's how I would answer that, because I don't think it's even this market. I think it's in every market. What you're describing is potentially true. In order to get yourself into backup position, you have to be able to explain to the listing agent, and then by proxy, the listing agent explain it to the seller why it would be to the seller's advantage to do it. Again, just go back to the whole deal of leverage. Number one, you got us as leverage that if buyer number one gets squirrely, you've got someone who still loves the house that wants it. Number two, tell your seller that if they don't have someone in backup position, sign backup position, then they have to put their house back on the market, which by the way means that they've got to do dishes again in the morning before they leave for work. They got to make the beds. We're going to have to do more showings over the weekend. You're going to have more people walking through your home that might be coughing on your stuff and touching your door handles. Explain it to the listing agent, and then hopefully the listing agent would explain it to the seller why it's in the seller's best interest to do it. And every now and again, they'll see it your way.
Scott, if the seller signs a backup offer and you have a signed backup offer, it doesn't commit the buyer to that, I believe. Am I wrong on that? But it does commit the seller?
It does commit the seller, but here's the thing is that you as the buyer's agent or as the buyer can withdraw your backup offer at any time you choose to.
But the seller is committed to it, correct?
They're locked in. They're locked in. Because think about it this way too. Just think about you're just the buyer. You're number one buyer on this thing. You could get out of your offer for any reason or no reason at all, as long as you still have contingencies in place. You can always find a way out, really. And we won't go into that today, but it's the same thing on the backup side is that, the buyer changed their mind. The backup buyer changed their mind. Here's my written cancellation. They've changed their mind. They've gone on to something else, but the seller can't do that.
I have a question. I have never received a backup offer on any of my listings to date. What is my obligation to the current buyer that's in contract with regard to the backup? Do I need to let them know that the buyer's agent officially, like, is there a paper where I just verbally tell them and then they just take my word for it?
That's a good question. I mean, I think if you had this signed, if you actually truly had what we're talking about here, the backup offer addendum signed, you could send this to the buyer number one to prove that you have it. Because on this form, none of the terms are here. Right? So you could prove it to them if you wanted to. And
we're not under obligation to tell them if we, not that I mean, I guess there'd be a benefit to let them know, but if we didn't say anything, we're under no obligation to do so. Okay.
No, I would just think about how you're playing poker, right? How are you going to play your game of poker?
Well, I would love to leverage that. I mean, definitely when it comes to, because they're all nice and sweet. And then when it comes to requests for repair, they hit you over the head.
Right. That's why we do inspections in advance nowadays. So they have one less thing to negotiate later on. Steve, you made the comment over there and LD seconded it, which is the values are going up so fast. Sellers want to go back on the market. Yeah, I think you're right. I could, if I'm a listing agent, chances are I don't want to sign backup offer. Right? There's probably some reasons why I would. There's some times where we might want to do that, but overwhelmingly, I wouldn't want to lock my seller into it. So I totally agree with that. What I'm suggesting is that you have a conversation with the listing agent on why it would be to the seller's advantage to do that. And if they see it your way, now you've done something for your buyer that nobody else has done for them. That's all. So, yeah, because if it falls out, if you've been in escrow for, let's say, 30 days, maybe they could get an extra $5,000 or $10,000, maybe. But you guys know it's a pain in the butt to have a house on the market if you're a seller. Showings and scheduled showings and people not showing up and leaving doors unlocked or letting the cat out or all of it, right? Imagine you're the seller and you're 17 days into escrow, 17 days into a 21-day escrow. You've got your boxes packed, the moving truck's showing up in 4 days from now, and the buyer cancels. You really want to put that house back on the market that's now in shambles because you got boxes all over the place? Maybe not. By the way, that's a really good dialogue. That's a really good script you could use because that paints a picture. The last thing you want to, I'm sure listing agent, the last thing you want your seller's going to want to do is put this thing back on the market. They're packed up. They're ready to go. They're halfway to Florida. And now you're telling them that they got to put their house back on the market, have showings, clean up. Maybe you had staging in the house and the staging's been removed. So just some consideration about painting some verbal pictures for the other side of the transaction that might get you what you need and what the buyer would need there. Okay. So, oops, I turned off my screen. So I'll just go back just real fast in case you missed any of those. So just in summary. So the first thing was school your clients. So just letting them know. So doing the buyer consultation, number one, and then just giving them the data on what's going on in the local real estate market or specifically in the types of areas or price point they're looking in. Pick up the phone means before you go show the house, have that conversation with the listing agent, butter them up a little bit, build rapport, find out what's going to be most important to the seller should your clients choose to make an offer. Secret 3 is write fantastic terms. Make your offer stand out from the crowd by shortening time frames, waiving things, moving seller-related fees to the buyer side. Secret 4, between yourself and the lender, sell your clients to the listing agent, why their offer is best, why they love the house, how quickly they can close, putting together a great offer package with every I dotted and every T crossed. Cross out secret number 5. Secret number 6, get the last crack at it. If hey, can you give us a chance to be the best offer at the very end? Will you do me the professional courtesy and before you accept an offer from somebody else, call me and let me know what terms that we have to exceed in order to be number 1. And if all else fails, get yourself in backup position. That's number 7. So if you go through those steps, and by the way, I know that sounds like a lot of work and sometimes it is, but I'll tell you this, it's less work than making an offer on the second house or the third house or the fourth house or the fifth house. And if you can successfully work through these 6 different secrets here, then maybe you only have to make one offer for a client. And you're not going back out with them again the next weekend and the next weekend until they find the next house. So, any closing questions or comments before we wrap? Then I did my job. All right, cool. Well, hopefully you guys got some value out of that. I know none of it's rocket science. I think it's just fundamental stuff that not everybody does every time. And just because you do it doesn't mean your competition is doing it. So just because you act like a professional doesn't mean that everybody in this industry does. So set yourself apart. And if you take these steps, you're going to win more deals than the average agent out there. So do that work and hopefully you get the results. So appreciate you guys. If you need anything else, just give me a shout, send me a message. Anything that we can do here in Roseville to help you, we're here for you. Have a good one.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
Absolutely.
When I was young, I should have known better. If you know